Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a book review for a thriller book. We haven't done one of these in a super long time, but January 2025, I almost said 2024, is going to be the year of getting back to mystery and thrillers. And we've got a doozy. We've got a doozy starting off the year. I am out here fighting for my life already in January. It is negative Janet January, because normally, it's negative Nancy, but I wanted to go with January. But it's negative Janet January because apparently I can't pick a good book to save my life. Because I'm having such a rough time, I'm going to bring you guys down with me, and we're going to talk about Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. This is a wild book. This is most likely going to be on my worst books of 2025, and it is January 7th. It's January 7th, and I despised this book more than most of the books on my worst list for 2024. Like, I feel more strongly about this book than most of them on the worst list for 2024, which is insane. And now I'm really mad that I didn't read it last year, because then it would be like 2024's problem and not 2025's problem. So yeah, our very first mystery thriller book of the year is gonna be a 1 star. I feel like that was very obvious from how I'm talking about it. It feels like the old days where I'm reading all these mystery thrillers and I'm like loving some of them, and then you'll pick one up and you're like, what is this garbage? And this is what this is exactly. If you enjoyed this book, do not watch this review. Don't watch it. Go watch something else. Do not watch this review, because this is going to be a roast. This is going to be a long ass roast where we just absolutely demolish this book. So I would not recommend continuing in this video if you want something positive and happy. If you want a good time, that's probably potentially going to make you laugh, especially if you didn't like this book. I would definitely continue watching this. Like I said, I had an arc of this and I actually listened to the audiobook. So we are going to start with non-spoilers. The thing is, especially about this book, it is actually really difficult to talk about this book not with spoilers. Like, I feel like everything in this book is a spoiler, like starting on chapter 2 or chapter 3. So, because they don't really give you anything in the synopsis. So when I was looking through it, I was like, oh, like this is gonna mostly be spoilers, but we are gonna talk about a very small section of what I liked, what I disliked, barely what I disliked, because again, the dislikes are all pretty much in spoilers. But yeah, but we're gonna try to keep it as spoiler free as possible for the beginning. So Beautiful Ugly is the newest release by Alice Feeney. It just came out this month. Is it even out yet? Because I know Book of the Month had it out early. Also, this is my brand new desk setup. I'm really excited. We set it up at the end of December or at the beginning of January. And it's been amazing. I've been able to sit and do stuff and use my heating pad on my shoulders while I'm sitting in the desk. And we got a new chair, new desk. Love it. It's been great. And I've been editing like crazy. So this has been an awesome addition to what I'm doing. So the book hasn't even come out yet. Oh man, it hasn't come out yet, but it is coming out next week. So I won't post this until this is out. So I'll probably save this review until, because I'm filming on January 7th. I probably won't post it until probably the last week of January, actually, because I have so many other things that I have to post right now. This was a very spur of the moment thing, because I thought this was just going to be like a 4 or 3 star thriller, and I was kind of enjoying the beginning of it. So I was not expecting the mayhem and chaos to ensue in this book to lower it down to an angry 1 star. Not just a 1 star, an angry 1 star. The plot of Beautiful Ugly, I can't tell you much, but I can tell you that it is following our main character Grady, who is a writer, and he is like kind of in the middle of like potentially his big break, and he is on the phone with his wife when his wife suddenly goes missing, and the book takes place a year later, and he's dealing with the trauma of his missing wife and dealing with kind of his career falling apart and all that type of stuff. So that is like the basics, the utter bare bones of this book, because I can't really say anything else. First off, let's talk about the things that I liked. I had an audio arc from NetGalley, and I will say, loved the narration. The narration is fantastic. I really like both of the narrators, because there was a female and a male narrator who were switching off and doing the different perspectives, and I thought it was fantastic. It's probably the only thing that I really liked about this book. Now, there's a couple of things, but generally, if I did not have that narrator, I don't know if I would have finished this book because of pacing issues. And also, I don't know if I would have gotten through the ending because I was rolling my eyes throughout the whole ending, that I don't know if my eyes could have stayed on the page long enough to finish the book. I will start off by saying audiobook is really, really good. So if you want to read this book, I would recommend the audiobook if you're into audiobooks. So other things that I liked, I definitely loved the setting. I thought the setting was really, really cool. It was an isolated setting of like 20 people on this island, which was so interesting because you kind of narrow down like the possibilities of the things that are happening. So I thought that was really interesting. There definitely is also this like sense of dread that I really enjoyed because there's like no technology on the island except for like there's no phones or anything like that. So they use like this walkie-talkie system, and he would like hear static, and it's like he could almost hear what they're saying to each other, but they were keeping him out of the loop. And I loved that. I thought that was cool. And taking his phone away and his means of transportation and stuff was a really good way to kind of isolate our main character and increase that sense of dread. I obviously love the dog. Columbo is awesome. Columbo the dog, highlight of the entire book. He was fantastic. And he was such a good little companion. And I think that's pretty much it. That is pretty much everything about the book that I liked, and pretty much everything else goes into dislikes. So dislikes, well, the writing was good too. I will say it was very compulsively readable, and the writing was good, which is something I am appreciative of just because I've been reading so many fantasy books lately that just have really, really poor writing. So it was nice to actually read something that had very good writing. So there you go. So dislikes, all the characters, every single character. There was not a single character that I enjoyed reading about or from the perspective of. I hated it. I hated it. I did not like, I'm trying to think of the other things that I can say that I didn't like without giving anything away. I thought the pacing was a problem in the middle of the book. It was a lot of meandering around and the same things happening over and over again to like increase the dread. So I just think that some other things could have been happening to create more interest in the mystery and so on, because that middle section was rough. It was definitely slow, and I definitely was like losing my train of thought while I was listening to the book. It would have been easier to pay attention if I was reading it, but I also don't know if I would have wanted to pick the book up constantly if I was physically reading it. So at least with the audiobook I could listen, but it was like I would have to rewind a couple times to be like, oh wait, I definitely fell asleep during this section. Let me rewind it back. I think that's literally all that I can talk about without spoiling anything in this book. Like literally, I hated the ending. That's the big thing. And I hated well, actually there is a but I can't talk about that either. So we're just going to go into spoiler sections. But yes, I gave this book a 1 star. I think it is terrible. I think it potentially is going to be in my worst books of the year. This book is going to stick with me because of how much I despise the ending. And yeah, so that's kind of my little non-spoiler review, just because again, this book has so many spoilers. The point of this book is a spoiler. So we're going to move into spoilers. So we're going to pop that little spoiler thing down there. If you do not want to listen to spoilers, definitely leave the video now and go read the book and come back. But yeah, we're going to get into spoilers. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot to get through. And I want to start this off by reading a review that I found on Goodreads that is also a 1 star, and I loved it. It cracked me up. If you've read the book, so if you're sticking around, I'm hoping you read the book or you just have no interest in the book. Let me give you a quick rundown before we start with that quote. So like I said, we were following Grady, our main character, who is an author. The thing is, and one of the things that I liked that I didn't want to bring up in non-spoilers is that I loved Grady being so there's 2 things with this. One thing I hate about it and another thing that I liked about it. Grady is an unreliable narrator. Kind of. So we'll get to the second half of that. But his unreliable narrator situation is that he is not telling us the entire truth about his marriage to his wife. Because at the beginning, you think their marriage was absolutely perfect and amazing, which as a domestic thriller reader, you can kind of be like, oh, no. If someone is saying it's this perfect, it is not this perfect. Grady starts slowly leeching his personality into this book, which I really loved, because you're suddenly reading it and you're like, oh, he's kind of a jerk. And like the longer the book goes on, the more it's like, oh, he's an asshole. He is awful. Oh my gosh. And it kind of gets to that point where we're like, dang, that was a really clever way of you basically going from thinking you're following this like normal good husband guy to actually he kind of sucks. So I thought that was actually done really, really well. Now, the part of the book that was not done well was the other unreliable narrator thing, because Alice Feeney is just a liar. Like, I hate that. She did something that I absolutely loathe in books, which is, it's a giant plot hole. She basically had Grady be almost sentient to the audience, because at the beginning of the book, you're on the phone as Grady, because it is Grady talking to the audience, but it is Grady on the phone with his wife, and she stops the car because she sees a body in the middle of the road, and she decides to stop and go check on it because she cannot just leave someone on their own. She has to go help them. And so Grady's on the phone saying, no, don't get out of the car. Don't get out of the car. Leave me on the phone, blah, blah, blah. And then nothing. Like, you're in Grady's perspective, the phone is dead silent. He's pacing, he's nervous, calls the police. He goes and runs to where she is, and she's missing. The car's not there, there's no person there. So Alice Feeney's just a liar, because we find out that the body in the middle of the road was him. So he's the one sitting in the middle of the road, even though you're told he's on the phone with her, pacing and etc., and discussing about how nervous he is. Supposedly he's the one on the ground, and he grabs her, chloroforms her, and throws her off a cliff. Alice, Alice, what are you doing? That is the biggest load of bullshit that I've ever read, I think, because there's like a rule in mystery and thrillers, and part of that is you have to be able to solve what's going on. And because you have Grady being in this, like, I think it's first perspective. It's harder to remember when you listen to an audiobook. But he's our main character, and he is telling us that he is on the phone with her. That doesn't make any sense to lie. It is literally just Alice Feeney lying to us, which it breaks like every rule, in my opinion, about mystery thrillers. Unreliable narrator is something completely different, where the narrator is almost lying to themselves, like about the marriage. Like, our character legitimately thought they had a fantastic marriage. Like, he didn't think the problems that they were having were as bad as apparently that they were. And so because of that, like, yeah, or like the author leaving out information that the narrator doesn't necessarily think about, or like doing it in a way where he is telling us what's happening, but it's in a way like his mind has let him think something. So like if he said like what is it? I was waiting for her at home, and I went out to go get groceries, and I came upon her car, and then I haven't seen her again. That is like an unreliable narrator, because it's if he's telling the story to somebody else, not us hearing it in his mind. That's the problem, is that it's straight up the character deceiving the audience in a way that's like, I know you're listening. I know you're reading this book. So it totally breaks the book, because you know you're reading a book, and the character knows it's a character in a book. Does that make sense? Like, that drove me crazy. I hated that. And that is a lot of people who gave it 1 star. That's the basics of the problem. So anyway, the story relies on that. That is what the story is his wife goes missing, he's writing a book, and he becomes a bestseller, and it turns out he's the one who actually threw his wife over the cliff because he found out that she was pregnant, and he had had a vasectomy he didn't tell her about, so she obviously is cheating, and he was going to leave her. And by her leaving him, that also, like, his agent is his wife's godmother, so he would have lost his agent in writing as well. So, would have lost his career and his wife because his wife was cheating on him. So he threw her over a cliff. That is like the biggest overreaction I've ever read, ever, which I would not put it past a man to do that. But everything around that happening was absurd. And he also didn't check to make sure she fell off the cliff, because she grabbed onto a branch and was able to pull herself up and survive. Yeah. So anyway, Grady goes to this island, and it is like 20 people, and he gets the keys from Kitty, his agent. So Kitty is his agent, the godmother to the wife, and she says, you haven't written anything in a really long time, I think you need to get away. So she gives him these keys to this house that she was passed down to from one of her previous clients, and so he goes there. There's no tourists, no nothing, there's no phone signal, you're not allowed to have your car there, etc., etc. And so he meets a lot of people, and he keeps thinking he's seeing his wife everywhere. And of course, we eventually found out that yes, he is seeing his wife. He also finds an old manuscript by the guy who lived in that house. He was, like I said, he was an old client of his agent. And so he takes the manuscript and passes it off as his own and sends it to Kitty after doing some editing and stuff like that. But then there's like this whole, oh my gosh, I'm like, how do I tell this story back? Then there's this whole backstory of apparently a ton of children dying on this island because of this like incident that occurred. That's because of this man who lived on the island who wasn't paying attention and shouldn't have been there, and he led these kids astray or something. It was very strange. Like, we learn eventually that this man was a predator and being awful, and apparently it was his fault that all the children ran away to this cave thing. I'm not going to go into that because it was almost like an afterthought for the main storyline. So anyway, yes, children, cave, died, people are upset about it. And so the whole island hates men now. So basically, the moral of the story, this is so hard to tell back, guys. Like, I am trying to get it right in my head, but it is so convoluted. So basically, the island is only women. They hate men. They basically were having the old writer held hostage to write books to supply the island with money, because they don't leave the island. They just do, like, it was bizarre. Again, absolutely bizarre. And that old writer actually turned out to be Kitty's husband. And Kitty's name is actually Abby. This book was told in two different perspectives, Abby and Grady. And it turns out that the Abby we thought was his wife telling the story on the other side is actually Kitty. And we're learning about Kitty's relationship with the writer that was previously living on the island. I hated it so much. So it was just absolutely bizarre. It was so bizarre why all these decisions were made. But yeah, so you find out Island hates men. They're now kidnapping Grady, potentially to write novels after finding out that he tried to murder Abby. But we found out at the very, very end that he actually was just having a dream, I think. I'm not exactly 1000% sure what happened at the end. But it seems like they drugged him with the tea, and then, because he was supposed to agree to write books, but I guess he didn't. I don't remember that happening. And so he has this dream that everything is happy and he's back together with Abby, but then he wakes up in a coffin and he's buried alive. And the last thing he hears is, I hope you die in your sleep, which was like such a weird thing. I could not imagine, like, I get the idea behind it is they used to tell each other before they went to sleep, I hope you die in your sleep, which is almost their way of saying I love you, because it's like the least painful way to die. And it would be a great way to die compared to a bunch of other options. But I cannot imagine going to sleep every night and looking at my husband going, I hope you die in your sleep. That is unhinged behavior. Like, that is actually insane. That's actually insane. Absolutely not. So I thought that was also strange. So to leave that as the final line, I was just like, no, nah, man. I actually thought it was better to leave it off on him in his inner monologue, almost in his writing voice, being like, and they tell you that the stories always end happily, but they actually don't, and blah, blah, blah. I thought that was a lot better than I hope you die in your sleep. And I was like, that's so cheesy. So cheesy. So anyway, I don't know if any of that made sense. I felt like I was like running rabbits trying to retell that story back, and I'm sure I missed like a ton of stuff. Like all the kids stuff, kind of skipped over all that because it was bizarre and weirdly explained in the book as well. So I'm not even going to try unless it comes up. But I want to read you this person's review because it was really funny. So it is by Katie T. And they wrote, I have no words, the absolute improbability that an entire island of man-haters gathered round to murder a man they never met because he attempted to kill one of their own, by an even more improbable likelihood that a man could lie in wait on the highway while fielding business calls and having chloroform while also perfectly timing only his wife to see him. Oh, and he does all of this to yeet his wife off a cliff and doesn't even make sure she fell off the cliff. I cannot process this. That's how I felt. Like, how is he telling us he is calling? Like, how are they on the phone? Unless all of that was a lie. Unless they weren't even on the phone. But I think they were. That's what I'm confused about. Like, how much is Alice Feeney actually lying to us about this book and what happened in it? Like, what was a lie? And again, it's not an unreliable narrator situation. It is just the author lying. Like, that's really what it is. There's also another review that I thought was pretty funny and hit some good points. This is by DJ Wood. And he said, let's see, here are some of the grievances. The lengths Grady and Abby went to not communicate. That was something that I had written 1,000 times in my notes, is everything could have been avoided if Abby just told Grady how much she didn't like him and how much she really did want a kid and just divorced him. And Grady just needed to say, hey, I really don't want kids. I don't think this is working out. I don't understand why this is so difficult. I can see more on Grady's side why he didn't say anything, because he's a selfish pig and he didn't want to lose Abby because that would also mean losing his agent. But on Abby's side, why? You don't like him. Like, it was very clear from even just him telling the story, because I gotta keep in mind that Abby in the background was not actually this Abby. That's why I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So does that mean that they actually did have a good marriage? I'm so confused. Now I'm thinking back and I'm like, what was the point? Like, what was the point of Kitty being the other perspective? Because now I don't actually know how much Abby and Grady liked each other. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute. Did Abby and Grady actually have a good marriage? He was still an ass. Like, he was still a jerk. And they had fights about things that from Grady's perspective, that he was, oh no, because they did. No. What? No, okay, so Grady's still a jerk. But he clearly is not as bad as I was thinking, because Abby is the other perspective. This is why this was so convoluted and stupid, is you give us this whole other perspective about Abby, but it doesn't, like, it applies to the story kind of, but then it makes you confused, like, how was Grady and Abby's relationship really? And why did this happen? I'm so confused. Okay, no, because then she was talking about how his book was his entire life. That's why it got confusing, because the two Abbys had such a similar life that it was hard to tell the difference when Kitty versus real Abby were talking. I hate this book. I hate it so much. Okay, we're gonna assume that Abby and Grady had a decent... No, because he got a vasectomy without telling her. And that is like grade A disgusting behavior. That is something you talk about with your partner, and if you can't agree on it, that is something you go to counseling for. And then if you still can't agree on it, you get a divorce, because clearly your like ideas in life do not align. So him getting a vasectomy but IVF without telling him is also unhinged. Like, both of you need to just sit down and talk to each other, because I have a feeling you don't talk to each other. Anyway, yeah, the lengths of Gabby, oh my god, their name are Gabby together. The lengths that they went to not talk to each other was actually insane. But now I'm like, I'm sitting here literally trying to remember if they hated each other or not, because of that stupid other perspective was so convoluted and confusing. What he said, yes, this is what got me. The idea that women need a man to financially provide for them. That's what this whole story boiled down to, was then kidnapping writers, exiling all men off the island, because apparently all men are absolutely vile, and making them work to pay for their stuff. And it was just like, oh my god, no. Like, where is the feminism? Like, where is the feminism? I guess you could argue that it's feminist because men make women sit at home sometimes and just cook for them and be their whole personality is wife. So now they've taken a man and stuck him behind a desk, and his whole personality is writer, I guess. I don't know, but I could not see the feminism in this book to save my life. I thought that was absolutely bizarre. And I love that this commenter or reviewer pointed that out, because that was unhinged. So this was also like a super weirdly sexual thriller book. Like, there were so many weird sex scenes, and I don't know if that was to like drive home the point that I don't know what the point of those were. I fast forwarded through most of them because I was like, I don't like this in my thrillers or mysteries. It's very strange. Let's see, what else did I have? Yeah, I hated the two Abbys' perspective. It clearly confused me. And then everyone overreacted to everything constantly. So we have Abby, who won't talk to her husband and wants to have a child, but will not talk about it. So she goes and gets IVF. That is a bit of an overreaction. Again, talk to your husband, get a counselor. If he still doesn't want that, divorce him and go through IVF. Then we have Grady, who sees that his wife wants to be pregnant and goes and gets a vasectomy. Bro, that's such an overreaction. You hate each other. Like, to do these two things, you actually hate each other, because two people who love each other would not do this. Like, they would talk about it first, obviously. And then him seeing the pregnancy test, knowing he got a vasectomy, and so he realizes she's probably cheating without looking at any other options, and throws her off a cliff. Like, without even talking to her. That's crazy. That is crazy behavior. Oh my God. And I was just sitting there like, wow. Like, wow, this is crazy. And yeah, we all would have been saved this entire book if they just got a divorce. I mean, that's really what this comes down to, is two people who needed to get a divorce. That's what this book was. So yeah, let's see what else. I think that is everything that I wanted to talk about, just because it's just really just the ending. The ending was really, really bad, and obviously I got confused by the perspectives, which to me proves that the book is not that well, like, done, because it should be like a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, and then everything should flood back to you where you're like, oh my gosh, this all makes sense now. And to me, I was like, what? What happened? So yeah, lots of problems with this book. Lots and lots and lots of problems with the book. And now I'm just gonna be sitting here in my little corner thinking about the two Abbies and Grady and Abby's relationship and what actually happened in it. Because now we like didn't get any type of story. We didn't get any backstory really. So now my brain hurts. My brain hurts, and like after realizing that, I don't like the book even more. But yeah, I think that is everything. I love the idea of an all-woman island who protect women who have been hurt by men and who need a safe space, because women's shelters are amazing places, but they are not the most comfortable. They are not the most safe feeling. So I love this idea of this island where it is just protected, but these women were unhinged. These women were crazy. Like, it was not done well. This could have been done really, really interesting, but the plotting and the absolute psychoticness of it, of just not going to the police about this and instead kidnapping him to write a book for them, is insane. That is so crazy. So I'm not on anybody's side in this book. This whole book was trash. Everybody was trash in this book. And everyone needed to find a brain cell that they could use, because clearly all of them were missing. Apparently the dog had the only brain cells in this entire book. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. I'm done talking about this book. But anyway, that is everything that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And we just got so many things. We got so many things. Like I said, I'm trying to read more mystery and thrillers this year, because I definitely do miss that. I do think 2024 was a rough year for mystery thrillers, so I'm hoping for better this year, but it's already not starting great. But yeah, that was my review for Beautiful Ugly. Definitely let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought about the book, if you liked it. I really hope no one here liked the book if you made it this far, because I feel so bad, because I hated this book so much. And maybe you can explain some things to me. That's what I want you to do. If you read this book, if you can explain a little bit more about Abby and Grady's relationship, I would love that, because I need a little bit more clarity. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely make sure to like it if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one.